This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
No, just sign, anybody who hasn't signed it.
All right, we are recording. So I think everybody who's coming today is here. I know Cindy and Christina were out of town this week. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I had an open time input. Rini, I mentioned I'd have that every time just in case anybody comes to join us so they can comment. We were here last time in case they wanted to say anything, but it's just us here, it looks like this time. Review and approval of the minutes. Did everyone receive the minutes? I wanted to go through a couple things on here, just since Ed and Rini weren't here last meeting. There's a couple of things that we talked about that I want to bring up again. But before that, is there any corrections or any issues with the minutes?
Were these sent out before today?
Yeah, Cindy Palmer sent them via email, I think a week and a half. She sent them just a few days after the meeting, I think.
I missed that.
Have you been getting her other emails, Tom?
Because I haven't checked out yet. I know it could be.
Do we have the right address for you, Dawn? Do you know?
I don't know what you're doing. I did get meeting notices and stuff like that.
Okay.
I can check what Cindy's sending them, what she had for your email address, and
Well,
I can do that right now, actually.
let me go back and check my email.
Okay, that's fine. So I guess there were a couple things, but I don't know if now is the right time to talk about it, but we had talked as a group about reaching out to the Labries, and after reaching out to the select board, there was some direction provided that is definitely a select board responsibility. So just to let everyone know, I did not do that after, talking with Rainey, and I don't know if you want us, we can talk about that more now or after.
We're going to reach out to her, and I think that's what the...
Well, yeah, I was actually going to report at this meeting,
Okay.
so yes, any outreach as far as land goes would strictly be a select board responsibility rather than a responsibility of this committee.
Okay, that sounds good, and that was the direction I received before I did anything, so just to let everyone know where we are with that one. And then the other thing is I had talked about creating a Google site, and that's in the minutes, but after we talked about just making sure everything's done at meetings and transparency, I just wanted to confirm with Ed and Rainey that that's an acceptable method of sharing information. Like a shared file to put
See why
these
that
up.
wouldn't be any difference than like a Dropbox or anything.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'll do is take the Excel sheets you sent out today, Ed, and share those in a shared document, if that's all right.
I think the only thing is it's a good place to put things so people can read, but not to deliberate. I think that's where the line would be.
So no editing back and forth or adding to them. Okay. And then I made a mistake and started reviewing these within 48 hours of the meeting and did not add the OSHA inspection that we talked about to our agenda. So I'm hoping we can still talk about that, either in regards to these minutes, or we could talk about it under other items not on the agenda. But that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention.
Do you want to make a motion just to accept the minutes as written?
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh, second.
Who seconded it?
Charlie.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Bye.
All right, thank you.
So I'm just going to abstain. So it would be all yes, no no's, and one abstention. Okay.
Okay.
Just because I wasn't here, and there's enough to approve them.
Any thoughts on talking about the safety inspection now, or?
Sure, whatever. I'm good.
Okay, do you want to, Chief Phil, Rini, and Ed in on what we were talking about last time?
Yeah, last time just Ed brought up, the state offers to come in for their, like the OSHA inspection. We, since 2018, they come up with just OSHA requirements, and it's sort of one of those things that I haven't done yet, but I put before the committee to consider whether we want to do it at this time. I think it's more appropriate that the committee decide the appropriate moment for that type of inspection, even though it wouldn't mandate that we do everything all at once. It would show us what we need to do to the station to bring it into compliance. And just doing that, you know, is going to put some pressure on actually taking care of those issues. So I thought it prudent for it not to be my decision, but to be the group decision, town decision, is to move ahead with that.
And Mark had mentioned maybe it would be something that we could bring to the select board rather than making the call to do it, you know, suggest it to the select board. And then we kind of tabled that to some degree since Ed and Rini weren't here, and just thought we'd have the conversation more further. So I don't know if there's any other thoughts on that one.
Can I just be clear? So the suggestion is usually OSHA would make do inspections, and this is sort of encouraging them to come in, so there could be sort of condemning the building and therefore more of a coercion as far as moving forward.
Well, they don't condemn it. So there's a program.
They would give you
There's
a time to fix it.
Yeah, there's a program where they say, you know, this is not just to try and, you know, hold your feet to the fire.
Mm-hmm.
The state program says that it's just to identify what you have, so that you can make a plan to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I both know that if you identify all that stuff,
Yeah.
as potential, then it is something that we really, you know, and we should look at safety of
Yeah.
people in both fire and police.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point do you do it? And it would seem most appropriate for selectmen to make that decision.
John?
Just a point of clarification. When you say OSHA, most people were think of the federal government. This is not the federal government. This is occupational health and safety at the Commonwealth level. Because the Commonwealth never accepted the federal standards, so it has its own OSHA program. I think it's important because people assume that it's the federal government doing this inspection, and it's not.
Now, wouldn't they come out and do regular inspections or no?
No.
No, they don't.
No, you don't. I mean, if you go on the website, it's a request that you put in.
Oh,
And they
really?
say on that request that they, you know, they're not going to issue fines and do all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's, you know, I mean, and if we're going to do this and point out things that are, you know, we're talking about, you know, doing the videos and those sorts of things, it would seem appropriate to have that to use as, you know, either pointing out in the videos that we go through, certainly in presentation to the town to say, you know, these are the things that have been identified by the state that really should be upgraded. Because if we're contemplating upgrading a 150-year-old building to those standards, or really moving forward for something in the town to build, it would seem a prudent thing to have done. But I think, you know, rather than the fire chief who's, you know, they're thinking, well, he's doing it only because he's a fire chief, and yeah, I'm concerned for the men and women that work for me, and I do want them to be safe, so I'm encouraging it, but I prefer it to be spearheaded decision by selectmen. If that's
Select
prudent.
board.
Select board, sorry.
Ed's usually pretty risk averse when it comes to things like that. I don't know what you have a feeling about it, but my sense is, and I mentioned this at our little publicity meeting, is I honestly think that the people in this town know we need a new public safety committee, a building. I think it really is about location and price. So, I mean, if you think it would, I don't know, if you think it would force the town to do something faster, that would be one thing.
I don't think it would force the town, I think it would just illuminate.
Yeah.
All, you know, because we're trying to do transparency here. You know, it's not just because, you know, oh, it's got a dirty floor is why we're getting a new one.
Right.
I think the townsfolk, you know, I think everybody sort of knows, yeah, it's a 150-year-old building, they should get a new one, but why? What does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, are we really, you know, I think if you put it in perspective that, you know, police officers and firefighters are in a subgrade building that's exposing them to carcinogens, that's like a little bit more valid of an argument, I think, and maybe more information than most people would know offhandedly as the reason for an upgrade.
Yeah, I don't know what other people think of it. Not really sure.
You know, however, if the committee moves forward into an updated feasibility study, an architectural firm can identify those items for both the fire department and the current police department, and as part of that report, rather than going right to OSHA.
Yeah, I'm not concerned that, again, possibly opening a can of worms. I think, ask you, is it pretty apparent what the deficiencies are, or are there some like hidden deficiencies that this agency is going to point out?
No, I think it's fairly apparent. I mean, most of it is just, diesel fumes and stuff, being close to safety concerns of where you're going to address them. I think most of it is fairly apparent. I don't know how, I think that if some, I don't know how far down the road an RFP is. I guess my only concern is that some of it really should get probably addressed if this fails again like it did the first time. Because it's sounding like the monetary value is going to be similar to what it was before, if not higher, in today's marketplace. And I worry that if the town then says, we don't want to spend the money, do we drop it for another 5, 6 years? And then the men and women in the departments, both fire PD, are in these, situations that they really shouldn't be.
So it's a free inspection, right? You call,
Yeah, it's free.
they come
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, the other thing is they may have some suggestions of things you could do as relatively inexpensive temporary
Yeah,
fixes.
because they've actually, there's newer smog exhaust extraction technology, which I think is cheaper than the original. So some of that may be transferable. So you may be able to buy something for a station here that you could then transfer to a new station. And that would be a positive.
My personal opinion is I think it would be a good idea to have the inspection done. That there's kind of no reason not to. That, like you said, people are working there, and this is a service the state offers for a reason.
I think I'm an advocate for that. I think it's just, I think going, for an RFP, I think it's certainly appropriate for that as well. But I think that it'd be a good thing to get.
So what we had talked about potentially doing last time is giving this as a recommendation to the select board rather than us going ahead and, obviously the select board should be involved in this. So I don't know, any other thoughts on this, or are people interested in that? Bringing this from this board, writing something to the select board that we recommend this, and then letting the select board determine if that's the course of action?
I'm not sure. It is, Ed, is this a select board decision to bring in an OSHA inspection, or is this a fire department decision?
Good question, good question.
I would still caution about bringing in and asking for OSHA. I mean, basically what are they going to do? They're going to tell you what the defaults might be, or the shortfalls might be. You're still going to have to go back to an architectural firm if we were to ask to have those installed in the station. So I would still say recommend it being done during the feasibility study.
You mean with an architectural business, architect business?
I think some of it might just, like, if they just suggested like the exhaust extraction, you could just get a quote, I mean, if that was the big one, let's say, you could get a quote just on that. Because that may be worthwhile.
It would have to be designed to get a quote.
I don't think it's square footage of a bid, and it may be. I don't think you need an architect to design to hang it with a fill. I think you'd have to go to a contractor who installs them and get the size of units, like a heating system.
The only question I have is, a little bit of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want them to come in, or, if it happens, it happens. If they say that people are unsafe working there and that, something has to happen yesterday.
They say that they don't do it. They
Okay.
don't do it like that.
All right.
And that's what their website says. And that's why.
Because if that's the case, it would be like, where are you locating right
Absolutely.
away? So that might be something that, if that's what they decided, then that's what's right for, your staff. But on the other hand, I guess that's my worry. I've had inspections, and I was told no one's leaving until these things get done, and then other ones can be longer term, so I don't know enough about the whole process, to be
Yeah, and
honest with
honestly,
you.
I wrestle with it because, you know, I mean, certainly, you know, I want to be fiscally responsible for the town.
Yeah.
But I also, you know, I have a personal commitment to the men and women that work for me to do the best I can for the environment that they're in. And it's a balance. And yeah, it'd be easy to say just wait for the RFP, but I think if we could cherry pick a couple things off it, you know, that really could be transferred over. I mean, I think to explore it, if it's going to be done in an RFP, it's going to be done. I don't know how long an RFP would take, would say within a year. I mean, why wait a year for it to get done? Why not just kind of do it? And, you know, I don't, from their website, it doesn't say that they're looking to shut you down or fine. And we've been living the way that it is for a bunch of years. So.
Do you know any other department that's had a inspection done by OSHA?
I don't know. That's a good question. I could reach out to the fire chief community though. How about you, Ian?
I don't know of any in particular.
Because that would be ideal, just to know better the consequences.
I will state though, if there's concerns about carcinogens, then this is something that should be prioritized. I mean, we're talking, you know, health, welfare of employees.
Individuals.
So if that is the case, I mean, look at the courthouse in Springfield, they refuse to go there. Because,
Right.
you know, they can't do that at the fire department. Well, I suppose they could, but what next? I think my point being is, if this was another building, let's say it was housing children, it would automatically be a priority,
Yeah.
right?
If it was senior center or town hall, I mean, you know, none of the employees would want to see you waiting for a year to get it done.
Can you let folks know what happens with the trailer, what the decision was for the trailer, and was that to protect the employees, or was that to provide 24/7 coverage?
That was the only sleeping arrangement that we had prior to the trailer was recliners.
Okay.
So, and that's in the office space that is not sealed from the apparatus bay where the trucks start up.
So are there, all the apparatus, when they come back from fires, is that currently in a separate place from where people then?
Sleep overnight?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the trailer's separated by a covered walkway.
Okay. In the past, that wasn't the case though, right?
That was no, because when the trailer, that was the one of the beauty of the trailer.
So that was one of the reasons, aside from the sleeping, was to provide more protection
Absolutely.
from this.
And that's one of the things that, you know, so OSHA may come in and say, well, it's, you know, it's a concern, but it's not the major concern they're not having. You know, it may be better than we think in some ways. They may, you know, there might be some construction stuff. There may be some, you know, place you should be for gear where it's not being in with the trucks. But I get a feeling it's not going to be necessarily as major. I don't think it'll shut it down, honestly, because we have the trailer. I think the trailer has really benefited us in a number of ways. One, it made it possible to have people come in, but it also allowed them to come into a safer environment. So
It almost sounds like this is a parallel decision. This seems like it's something that needs to be addressed. Public safety complex needs to be addressed.
yeah, just bring it forward. Yeah, this would be my vote, but like I say, I'm looking out for employees. That's my major concern.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think in terms of an architectural firm coming up with a list versus a list from a state agency, if we were bringing this to town meeting and, you know, if we were doing any sort of presentation to the town, I would give more weight personally to a state agency report than the firm that's trying to some degree, sell us something. And just kind of one note. So going back to what you were saying, Rainey, in terms of who would have the authority to ask for this report or ask for this inspection. You know, Ed, if you have any thoughts on, I know that your opinion is it shouldn't be done right now, but who would ask for this if that was the way that we were to move forward?
It could be the chief or it could be myself.
Okay, but it wouldn't need to go to the select board for review, is that?
If they wanted to review it, they could. It would still be either the chief or myself that would probably end up requesting it, however, rather than the select board itself.
Okay.
That's kind of what I thought.
Correct, Charlie?
May I suggest we table this for 6 months?
Why
That
6 months?
seems like a long time personally.
Well, just because I say 6 months doesn't mean that somebody else can decide in 3 months to do something. What I'm looking at is, we are on parallel tracks with this issue. If we have a better handle on where this is going, I think that would be more timely to get this information so that we have something to present for town meeting. We're not presenting anything for this town meeting because it's just too short of a window. So what I'm looking at is table it for 6 months. I happen to agree with Ed in the sense that sometimes you open these doors, you can't close them. The other side is I agree with John in the fact that people shouldn't be subjected to this, but I also like the whole idea that there's a trailer there and keeps them out. When I was involved in the city of Easthampton, the firemen slept upstairs in the bay apparatus, and the push was to take and get ventilation in there to off-gas the equipment because they actually were in the same building. But in this case, that's not the case. So I'm thinking, you know, a motion to hold off for 6 months and revisit this and then see where we're going. By then, we'll have a better handle on the rest of this.
Chief Wickman, what do you think?
I don't know, man, I mean, I respect both you guys. I guess, I think of it as, you know, it is two parallel courses that we're taking. And so, you know, it's hard. I don't like the idea of putting it off for too long. I think that, you know, it's brought up, it's a recorded meeting. It's one of those things that in 2018, you know, I put some figures through to finance. And I feel like as a municipality, we have a duty to look at it.
But if I may, there's nothing that precludes you from submitting to the capital committee funding to take and put a ventilation system in today.
Yeah.
Now, if they'll allocate the money or what, that's another issue. But the point is, you could submit this today, requesting this at a town meeting vote in May, to take and install this in July. It wouldn't take having to have an OSHA report to do that because the common person understands carcinogens and exhaust fumes.
Do I personally know whether that, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and do I think that that would be appropriate? I do. But, you know, there again, you know, this, the building is just getting back together again. And so partly for me to initiate that when there was no talk of even a building, it was hard to put that together because it's, I don't know how much money it's going to cost. When I did recently look into this issue and looked at like some of the smoke scrubbers, they were, I mean, it used to be a $70,000 type investment. Now it looks like you might be able to do something for $10,000 or $20,000. So honestly, it might be a great thing to put it in sooner than later and just put it in front of that room. But I don't even know, and I don't want to waste the town's money. I don't know if that's the priority as to what the state would recommend or not. Do you know what I'm saying?
But you're recommending.
I mean, I would recommend it.
You're doing it right now. So why not just move forward with this instead of opening up the rest of it and then finding that we're in a situation where we can't address everything in a timely fashion. And now we're only talking just your building, we're not even looking at the police chief.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, I don't think that what we're gonna find is gonna be so egregious as we would need to move everybody out there to close the building. And I guess I'm thinking that to bring them in would be more a matter of, you know, sort of help prioritize what are the important things to do. You know, so if it was like the smoke scrubbers, if that's the important thing to do, because I've been hearing from, and as Rini said, I should reach out to some of the folks that may have brought some of the state in, because if what I'm hearing is that the smoke scrubbers aren't the most important thing, I think they're important, but are they, you know, where do we spend our money? I don't want to just spend money bringing in, especially a couple of years ago when smoke scrubbers were $70,000. If they're cheaper now, it's a better option. But I'd much rather have the guidance of, you know, an agency that comes in and says, hey, well, this is more important than that. And if you come up with a plan for, even if it's a 5-year plan, I just think it's not a building committee tact, it's a safety for employee tact. But I think there's someone that stated they're parallel courses, and to put it off 6 months, even mention it here was a bit of a bag of worms. But to mention it here in a public environment, I think it's, you know, I think it should be looked at. And I would recommend that we look at it and then make the best cost analysis look as to what makes sense for time and money, as to where to move forward. And if it's smoke scrubbers, then, you know, we might be able to get them, you know, relatively inexpensively. And that would be easy, and go into a 5-year plan to, you know, fix it or build a new station. And I think that it's all moving in the same direction.
Well, now we're on a triple track.
Okay.
Chief, do you think that maybe, I mean, you mentioned talking to other fire departments who may have done this in the past, and then maybe you could reach out and get more information here before our next meeting in 2 weeks, see what they've seen in the past, and then I wonder if you could call this organization without initiating anything and ask what their outlook is? I don't know, I wouldn't want to accidentally initiate something if that wasn't the intention.
Everything I saw
but
on the website really, you know, it sounded like they really were making an emphasis not to just like throw your business in your town or your building under the bus. I mean, that was, you know, that's the hard concern, because, you know, I'm not looking to, you know, just throw the town under the bus for a lot of money or close down the building or anything like that. I worked hard to keep that station running, to keep providing the service, which I believe is valuable to this town. So on the website, it gave a lot of assurances that they weren't trying to do that. So I think it's appropriate that I reach into some other communities that may have done it, prod that a little bit. Maybe I can send something to you that you could then put out to the group. That would be a good website so everybody could kind of look at it. And then, you know, maybe next meeting we make a decision as to, you know, to go forward with at least the evaluation.
Yeah. I personally think that sounds good.
I do too, because I don't think people should be working and sleeping in unhealthy environments.
Yeah, as Charlie said, I think the sleeping we've done pretty well with proactively. I think that the town in general, I mean, we moved forward with the trailer, and that was really a good move for many more reasons than we recognized at the time. But thank you, and yeah, I think that might be a good way to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I would defer, I think, to the chiefs and Ed about this, to be honest with you. But I do get concerned about going to the town at a town meeting for capital money, because people are going to say, well, didn't we just reform a public safety building committee? I mean, so there might be a little bit of like
Flex.
People feeling like we're putting money somewhere where I thought we were going to move forward with a public safety complex. That
Yeah.
it would have to involve a lot of explanation.
That's why I think it is good to try and get a sense from the state, because they put so much on their website that they're ready to work with you and not just find you and make you do things. My guess is if we had say, okay, we've got a 5-year plan, we're going to have a new station in 2 years. If we told them that's a plan, that's great. If that didn't work out, then we'd have to redo that plan. But I think it would give us time to do it. I don't think anything's going to, I mean, my fear is that we shut down the fire department because I don't know what we do for a town. And so, I have concern with that also. I mean, I have concern for the folks at work there. But I'm of the thought that nothing is so egregious as that it will need to be shut down. I can't guarantee that, but that's my thought. And I think if I reach out to some of the other departments to get a sense of that, that would be helpful. And I think if I get that website, so we all can kind of look at that website, because I felt fairly assured from that website that they weren't going to do that. That wasn't the intent to go there coming into, it looked like they were coming in to assist communities to help them make decisions
Mhm.
as to whether to build a new station, which, isn't gonna happen overnight.
But Charlie, when you mentioned the 6 month, wasn't that because we're gonna know kind of where we're going and how fast
Yeah.
in that period of time?
That would answer people looking
Okay.
at us voting for a public safety complex in relationship to all this other stuff. I've been involved in this kind of stuff for a long, long time. I watched Easthampton put their air reduction systems in and everything else into the old station and then build their complex and try to take and marry some of the old equipment into the new building just because of that. Because as you become aware of the fact that your employees are being subjected to things, you try to address that. I did work with the state OSHA on some projects, but they had to do with dry cleaners and hazardous chemicals and exposure to the public because they were venting this stuff into the air next to sidewalks and schoolyards and stuff like that. And they mostly let the local community take the lead. They just guided, they didn't actually take the lead. Now, that's a number of years ago.
Okay, I think at this point, it would probably be good to move on to our next item if we could, and maybe we'll table this to next meeting and get more information. I would be curious from any of the other, maybe don't reach out to the organization themselves, but from any of the other fire chiefs, how long after they reached out?
Yep.
Was it 2 weeks later they were there, or was it 4 months later they
Yeah,
were
because
there?
it could be that 6 months may get burned up just waiting for the appointment.
Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. That's prudent. Let's see what some other folks have done, if we can figure that out. Ian,
Okay.
can you help with that? Is there any other departments?
I'm not aware of any police departments having the issue because most of their vehicles are outside.
Yep.
But I can certainly help, sure.
Have you ever taken a ride up to Greenfield to their temporary fire department?
I've been to some temporaries, but I haven't been to Greenfields.
You get a chance.
Yeah. Well, and what's the thought with that we might do a temporary station?
I hope not.
Yeah, that's my.
But I think you need to see this.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories. I mean, Westfield had done some renovations. There was a temporary station that they had done, just while they had done that. I mean, it's not an easy transition. So
It's
that's,
an inflatable building.
Oh,
yeah, there's.
Westfield's got one?
They did for a little bit. I forget which station it was. But I know they did some, I think it was renovations that they'd done to one of the stations. And so they had people in a temporary building.
Maybe Little River, I'm almost thinking, I've been by that and saw an inflatable building
Oh, is that, well, maybe that's the way they do it.
Like,
But I don't think it was any major state mandate. It was just something that the community had put together to upgrade the station. But,
Okay.
try and get some information, bring back to next meeting.
okay, that sounds good. Unless anyone else has anything else on that topic, I'd kind of like to get some of the property lists today if we could. Sorry. Okay. The finalized committee charge, I'd had that on here. I know there were some discussions at the last select board meeting about the committee charge. I don't know, Ed or Rainey, if there's anything to report on that being finalized, other than that the select board would be the ones reaching out to any owners.
The only change that was made that required a signature then was because Ed was made an ex officio member.
Correct.
So that we could bring in another at-large member. So that was the main reason it was on the agenda for select board, but then I wanted to just clarify after I read the minutes, just to make sure that the select board's intention was that piece where it says, recommend a couple of properties, priority town-owned land. I just wanted to understand, without my own interpretation, of what that meant, and just clarified that reaching out would be by the select board.
Okay.
That was the only thing, unless you have anything else.
No, and the only other piece was the clause in it that basically opened up that fifth at-large position, was that the select board did not have to abide if vacancies came available in the future by those particular categories.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
In other words, we
Oh.
had folks in construction, historical, finance, that wouldn't necessarily have to be matched by the same background.
Well, yeah, that, or, if Don left from the historical commission, not necessarily would, we have to, or the select board look back to have to fill that for someone from
Okay.
the historical commission.
Okay.
And if, Southampton got progressive and decided to have a public safety commissioner rather than a fire chief and a police chief, then perhaps those two would become the same categories.
Okay.
Throw a monkey wrench in the
We might not have to fill a historical.
A little more controversial.
All right, so review of, or status of potential lots. Got the list Ed sent out this afternoon or earlier today. I took the two documents and I sorted them by town-owned and non-town-owned, and that's what's in the packet here. The first one is a half-mile radius town-owned, 1 mile radius town-owned, and then half-mile radius not town-owned, and 1 mile radius not town-owned, which, as you would expect, gets to be a much longer list of properties. I wasn't sure what additional information, I guess this question for you, is available. I personally not familiar with the use code, but I don't know what the best way to, start going through these in terms of looking at, what the assessor's map, if there's already, I'm guessing some of these have a building, and obviously one's town hall. Do we just want to walk through some of these first few and see if any are easily ruled out, or create a list of criteria? Anyone have any ideas of how to go about this?
I think with the town home, we could probably go right through it very briefly. Almost the committee here.
Yeah, okay.
Could I just ask maybe the chiefs, I know that when this came up before, there was a lot of discussion around what would disqualify a piece of property. For example, I think if the fire trucks had to go uphill when they left the station. Is there anything else that things that interfere with response time?
We had actually a discussion about that at the last meeting.
Oh, you did, okay.
Some
Then
of
you
us-
don't have to go
no,
through
it's
it
okay,
then.
but some of us actually reached out to our insurance agents.
Right, I remember hearing about all that, the distance from hydrants and things like
As
that.
far as distance-wise,
Right.
it didn't make any type of impact.
Is there anything else specific to a piece of land that would be important or disqualifying that you can think of?
Yeah,
No?
as far as the driving uphill, that's not even so much of an issue with everything being automatic. It used to be more of a big deal when you had a standard truck, because that was a liability if somebody missed a gear.
Oh, okay,
But mostly it's a response time and traffic patterns.
okay.
Charlie, did you have something?
Well, when we did this some 10 years ago, this is like the first brush. The next layer is, are there structures on these lots?
Yeah.
Correct.
The next layer is, are there deed restrictions on these properties? And are they deed restrictions that we can overcome? So that starts to take this list and really bring it down.
Right.
And if we're looking at town properties, I think you're gonna still see that we're back to right here or down by the Bruce Ford landfill. I don't know about the Gun Road piece that's by the school.
Behind the school. Is that on here?
Does this
That
list
might have a
usually
potential,
this town law?
but
land first?
it didn't come
Yeah.
into the half-mile list.
Okay.
It would be Palmer Mill Road.
Is it the
It
Palmer
would be
and the,
34 Palmer Mill Road.
That would be the Gun Road?
Yes,
okay.
it's part of the school. Part of
Okay.
I
the
think it makes sense to start just going through the list. I mean, people are pretty well aware of all the property. I
Yeah.
guess I would just caution, I think in the last time, I think we were quick to exclude properties, and I think that it would be helpful to just, make a list of what ones would be possible, because I think there were problems the last time, so I just think it would be good to make sure that we just make sure that we
Make a list.
keep ideas
of how we're gonna
open.
refine them.
So do we want to start with these four on the half-mile radius town-owned? And just to clarify, this is a half-mile radius from the existing fire department? Or is this from Palmer?
Half-mile radius from the intersection of Pomeroy Meadow Road and Route 10, the central location, the center of town.
So is that, we talked about this a little last time and we were a little unclear. Is that the center based on population density? Or is that?
Graphical, geographic.
Okay, because Christina was saying she was curious and drove, you know, from there down to the southern town border and then up to the Easthampton town border, and it was, you know, much further to the south than to the north. I don't know if that's because the road's not straight
Could be
or,
because the road's not straight, but that is the geographical center.
okay. I think it's, I mean, they're not very far apart, so you don't
No.
get a hugely different list. All right, so town hall, I think where we're sitting here, the first one listed, 178 College Highway.
That, I believe, is cemetery.
Yes, it is.
Okay, huh, it says mailing address, town hall. Oh, because,
It's open land.
oh,
I have maps, by the way.
Oh,
of,
great.
these.
210 College Highway would be there.
okay. Okay, so it's not gonna be the cemetery.
Well, what kind of questions, because it's probably appropriate now to sort of think about what questions we want to ask about a property as to how it qualifies, like for viability.
And if you want, I can probably throw it up by map code if you want to look at any of these, and if I can find the right input on the television.
Okay.
Well, because you were saying we don't want to
Well-
exclude them right away.
Well,
And what kind
I
of
think,
questions?
well, that's why I asked the question about a criteria, because last time, I think that people's, that were in the committee, or I forget who it was, basically said, the transfer station is not a good option because the fire trucks would have to go uphill if they're going up Moose Brook. And since my house lives up Moose Brook, I think that's very good.
There was also the issue of the bridge.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so I just didn't want, if that's true, that's true. I just wanted to clarify, is there any reason why it would, you know, it would not be good from a police or fire standpoint?
I think it's just more, I mean, speaking from fire, I think it's just more ease of access,
Yeah,
you know, of getting to major corridors to get yourself to different parts of town.
yeah.
So the better access we can have, better location for access,
Mhm.
would prioritize a spot for me.
Yeah,
That makes sense?
Yes.
yeah, there was another stretch where people, I had heard it wasn't a very good corner to be exiting emergency vehicles. So I just want to, that's why I asked, are there any?
And that's a consideration, because they're
Right.
going, I think for me, speaking for fire, it's more, you know, when you're taking a truck out, it's a big truck. And so
Mhm.
you don't want to bring it out in a blind corner.
Mhm.
That's a concern. So it's response time and traffic patterns, which is really, for me, my personal, you know, concerns, those are big concerns.
Mhm.
One of the pluses of the Woodsbrook Road landfill thing was the fact that there was no disruption of the neighborhood by this being placed in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Because you had a golf course on one side and then
Mhm.
basically the transfer station on the other and town property on the opposite side.
Mhm.
And it was pretty sparsely populated there, still is.
Mhm.
The issue I remember was, one, trying to keep it closer to the center for
Mhm.
the reasons that there back then. And the concern was the narrow bridge on Moose Brook Road to head to Route 10. Personal feeling is I don't think that's much of an issue. It's not a two-lane bridge, granted, but it's not like, you know, we got traffic going there every day anyways. And it would have put you, as both departments, on Strong Road, which would have gave you access to Pleasant Street. And once the bridge is fixed on East Street, you'd be back to the normal in that regard. It would have gave you higher elevation for your radio communications instead of being in a hollow here.
Mhm.
Because if you look at this road, that elevation just keeps going up there.
Is that property on the list? Which property is that, just so I?
It's probably not on the list, unless it's on the mile.
It would have to be on the mile list.
I don't,
if it's,
is it Moose Brook, is it on Moose Brook Road or?
Yes.
Because I don't see Moose Brook Road on here.
So is the first property the cemetery?
That was my understanding.
Yes.
So 6.5 acres, 178 College Highway is the cemetery.
Yeah.
So that's out.
That's out. 210 is Town Hall and this property, which obviously is to consider.
Yep.
So Bushwick Road's not even up here.
And then 34 Pomeroy Meadow Road is behind the school.
That's the school. 34 Pound Meadow Road is the school.
Oh, okay.
The property that's not being used is what's the ball fields behind the school.
Okay, but it's all one lot right now.
It's all.
Okay.
So,
Doesn't it have access to the, Pomeroy Meadow?
Check, well, I mean, you could possibly make access to Palmer Meadow.
Yeah.
Yes, possibly. Again, I don't know I'm not sure the topography there, exactly, but I think there's several acres back there. It's a narrower strip.
it's 55, it's a 16.51 acres.
Yep, that includes the ball fields, the school
Yeah.
and everything. So there's a strip of wooded land back there that is in between Long Hill Gardens,
Mhm.
the apartment complex, and the ball fields.
So it seems like we'd want to know how much of that land is unused by the school.
There's a good chunk of.
There's a good.
Yeah, it borders one residence and then country gardens.
And it would border the condos, 22 Palmer Meadow Road condos.
Mhm. I guess for now I would say
Yeah,
yes.
I think that seems like a one to keep on the list.
Yeah, but it doesn't even appear on
What?
the list.
It is, it's listed as 34.
34.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's all one property. And then Little Mountain Road.
That is an unimproved road that I think conservation, that's property that is purchased in conservation.
Okay.
And that would be in between Maple Street and Walcott Road.
Okay.
So a very wooded area. I think conservation purchased that.
Okay.
It's the original site for the town's water tank,
Oh,
way back 1930-something.
There's a lot of land right here that, is it 24 acres?
it says it's 78.
Because it says Town of Southampton Water Department, 78 point, yeah, there it is, right here, 78.70 acres.
Where do you see that? Oh,
It's right on north,
no, she's.
west of Parsons Way,
She's looking at the actual map.
Oh,
west of Courtney Lane and west of Parsons Way.
right, so that would be Little Mountain.
Yeah.
That would be Little Mountain.
That's a lot of land. And it borders 42 Mine Road, Westhampton. Huh?
So that's within a
Oh, that's
half
just the old
mile
one.
of. That is,
Right, part of that parcel. but
Part of the
part's
parcel.
just-
As far as the crow flies.
Yeah.
But it's also water department land, which
Right.
means it probably has major deed restrictions on it.
So from your knowledge, would it be something worth pursuing to see what deed restrictions were and what kind of access we might have? Or is it,
I think the only way to access that would be through Walcott Road.
which that would seem roundabout
Yes.
and almost rule it out really for our purposes. I just following Reedy's train of thought, I wrote down like appropriate use of land for what we're trying to do as one criteria. Traffic patterns and then access to major thoroughfares.
yeah.
We can always add to that list, but that just,
Well, it
I
seems,
kind of took what Reedy was saying and put words to it. So we can ask those questions about each parcel.
I would be curious to focus on the school parcel.
Yeah, so the school, with this one, we already know is a parcel.
Basically what Hadley did.
And
And it's all sands and gravels, it's easy to work.
Yeah.
Town water runs right through it.
So
It's just a question of.
here's the, just so you know, here's the Town of Southampton Water Department, just,
that's the
it's a,
same.
yeah, it's a big parcel of land, but I can't, I'd have to look at another map to see where it actually, what they were just saying is Walcott Road.
Oh, you need a traffic light.
Can't see the map.
So that's Walcott.
Yeah, that's Walcott, right? So there's, I don't even know, I don't even think there's access for Walcott.
So that's,
Yeah.
yeah, you go up Walcott over to
Line
Valley
to the
Hill.
north.
Yeah.
So do we want to?
Oh, that is close to us, huh?
Can I ask you a question about this property, the town water department? How does the water department access the land?
Through Walcott Road.
Through Walcott Road, because there's
And
no...
then there's a unimproved road that goes to the tank.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, that's the, oh, I've been up there.
But I don't think the water department is all that. I think that might be, a lot of that might be conservation. I could be mistaken, but I think a lot of it was purchased from
I
conservation.
think there's layers of
Yeah.
on that. The assessor's records just give a quick,
And just,
So isn't there any access, I mean, if it's right behind Parsons and Rosalie, wouldn't there be access from College Highway
No,
or Pomeroy?
no, the only other access that would be through High Street. Because it's all owned. For instance, that old farmhouse, that big farmhouse on Walcott and
Mm-hmm.
Palmer Meadow Road,
Mhm.
they have a lot of acreage there, and they have bought Parsons.
Mhm.
So those are all residential homes up that mountain.
Oh, okay.
That's 39 acres or
Right.
something here.
Right.
yeah. And honestly, you know, the 34, for the school property in behind there, if our access point is really only Gun Road, trying to get on to Route 10 is a dangerous intersection. You really need a light there.
Mm-hmm.
I think just as I turn around, phone a friend to try and get more info, we may want to rule that out, only because there's, if you're using just the 3 criteria that I wrote down, which we can use whatever, but traffic patterns, I think, would be a challenge on that site. And I think, just speaking as a, you know, as a resident, I think you might want to save some of that land if the school ever decided to do something additional. They might want to keep, I know that schools like to build like another school next to it, or add a ball field, you know, I don't know what their future plans are. If we were gonna move forward, we'd probably wanna have school representation kind of speak to that. But I would be tempted to almost rule that out, only because of traffic patterns being such a challenge to that site. I don't know if we could upgrade them in a functional way.
Even if you had a traffic light there, I don't think it would be very effective, because we were blind coming north
Coming
and
both
south.
sides,
I
yeah.
mean, the fire could actually would grant with a light, but as it's not traffic.
Yeah, and now you're coming out with emergency vehicles right next to the school, which is,
Well, most places don't have 2 exit, you know, I mean, it's still a Pomeroy Meadow.
yes, you could come out to, Pomeroy Meadow.
Well, I think unless you feel strongly that we should just take it off the list, it seems like it's worth at least involving other people in the conversation.
We can look at it, I mean.
Yeah, it's fine to look at it, it raises a flag for traffic patterns for me.
What about the Little Mountain thing? Is that,
There, again, if there was access patterns, I think it's more, I'm just using what I wrote.
I don't really
which is-
know the land as much.
Is the land appropriate, or does it have deed restrictions? I think that would be a question for that one. And then, you know, traffic patterns and access to major thoroughfares. I'm just using the 3 that I jotted down quickly. And I would, you know, either of those, if you want to look into them, that's fine, that's all good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I would flag both of those for the traffic patterns and access to major thoroughfares.
You mean the last one too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, both the Little Mountain and the Pomeroy Meadow, I want to make sure that those are somewhere we're looking at.
Does the present fire department have a traffic issue with this now?
It works pretty well where we are.
Yes, huh?
I mean, you put on lights, people can see you with your lights with enough room to stop if they had to stop, so you can pull out with your lights. So it's not perfect, but it's not bad. It's functional.
Or it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone rather than
Yeah.
a 45 or 50.
Yeah, but you know, they all do 40. And for the most part, I usually wait for them to sort of slow down before I put myself into the middle of it. Just because there were motorcycles that do along, and they're always leading on a motorcycle.
Charlie, did you have something?
yeah, about 10 years ago, the original committee did this evaluation of town properties. It might be helpful for all of us to open that up and take a look and see what was written back then. Because they didn't just focus on one parcel, they focused on all town lands originally.
Yeah, that's what you had sent out.
You
Yep.
all have a copy of that electronically.
Yeah, I have it printed. I didn't bring it today, but that's a good idea.
Just trying to
I would-
save steps.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any more information in that in terms of some of these, like access or how long a driveway would need to be if it was,
Yeah.
because that's what I was thinking with this Little Mountain Road, even if we had some sort of access, it's pretty,
Remote.
yeah, far from a road. I mean, you'd have a long driveway, which I don't usually think of a fire and police department having a long
Yeah.
driveway
Be a
through the
long
woods.
driveway and then a long route to the next major road too.
Yeah.
It's 20 minutes to get to the main highway.
So is that report that you referred to, is that something that you could feel out and just?
You have it.
So.
You have it, everyone here
Yes,
has it
everybody.
electronically.
All right. So if I go through that file, we can find, I just thought it would make it easy, and why aren't we looking at that?
That's what I'm bringing it up. Why don't you look at that first? I'm not saying it's covering everything and every question, but if the committee went through this process 10 years ago and wrote a report on it.
All right, so after we go through this, maybe the next meeting, we can look at that report in comparison to what we're trying tonight.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. So it sounds like this first page, we know Town Hall, 34 Pomeroy Meadow Road, there's some traffic pattern concerns, but it's worth leaving on the list. Little Mountain Road, there's more concerns, both with traffic pattern, access, and potential deed restrictions. We don't know that it should be eliminated, though. I guess leave it on the list, noting that there's those concerns.
Is there any information that we want to gather on any of those?
That's what I was wondering too. I mean, so this Little Mountain Road is how the water department drives in there on an unimproved, it's like a
It's
drive?
basically a log, it's the equivalent of an improved logging road, if you will. It's
Okay.
a dirt road that you have to actually drive, I think it's a right of access, not even a road, because there's private property on both sides of it.
Yeah, that's what I was curious, what right of access or right of ways exist, and how long that drive, I mean, that could rule it out easily if the only option would be a 5 or
I think from
100 foot,
Walcott
1,000 foot
Road,
driveway.
It's less than a quarter of a mile from Walcott Road, I know that much, you know, so it's not a mile into the woods, but it's less than a quarter.
Yeah, I actually walked down there now that you mention that. You know, and on the High Street side, I can see there, it's pretty much the back of the cemetery and Janet Brown's property behind that, then that's where the land is. So, yeah, I think probably hearing from the water department would make sense, right?
Yeah. In terms of reaching out to the water department for more information, who should do that? I mean, I can, I'm not sure if there's somebody who has a water department.
You
Yeah.
do realize you can go on the registry of deeds and
Um,
just pull up the information.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You don't need to,
You need to find out if there's any deed restrictions.
yeah, it'll all be there.
Okay, so maybe that's the next step, is for next meeting, we could pull that information and the report that was done back. Because I don't remember seeing anything in there about Little Mountain or about 34 Pomeroy Meadow
I don't
Road.
remember doing 34 Power, and I don't remember doing Little Mountain, but that could very well be because they got eliminated early in the process for what other reason there might have been.
Sure. So, could somebody take that on to pull the information for 34 Pomeroy Mountain and Little Mountain Road properties? Okay, that'd be great. See what you can gather
Who
and
wants to do that?
mark.
Mark, okay, thank you.
Going to the next list, this 1 mile radius does include some of the same properties, of course, that are within the half mile, so those can be kind of ignored for this purpose.
Just before we get started on that,
Yeah.
Looking at a 1 mile radius, I wonder if that's sort of extreme. Should we really be looking at like a 3/4 mile?
That's a good question. You mean to knock this list down a little?
If you look at some of the, I just did it real quick, just a mile radius, think about having a fire station up here, doesn't make sense that it's gonna serve the town.
What are your research, half mile, 3/4?
Well, I mean, this is a rough thing, but this is, actually I did it from the fire station.
Yeah,
And this is a half mile, it's about 3/4 mile, it's about a mile.
yeah.
But, if you think about putting a fire station out here, is it really gonna be able to service somewhere over here?
Yeah, I don't think so. Personally, if you're asking me.
Does this say how far it is from the location? Does this list that we
No, the
have?
assessor doesn't.
Oh, okay.
A lot of these properties in the 1 mile, a lot of those that's conservation land that I'm recognizing.
Okay.
You know,
Well, what's,
So Charlie has been raising his hand.
sorry, John.
I'm used to this, I mean, this is the way my life has been. May I suggest that we focus on the half mile radius, and if we eliminate all the half mile radius, then we go further?
The charge is priority for town-owned land, so I think we should just cross these all off as much as we can and see if any town-owned land shows up in that, at least 3/4 of a mile.
Yes, I think that half mile, I agree.
The charge is
Sorry.
priority for
Yeah.
town-owned
Well,
land.
some half mile, if we can find something we'll do.
Yeah, but I think Reen's making a good point that if it's town-owned, we should look at it within that mile, so my guess is we're probably gonna rule it out anyway.
Yeah,
And then we can look at other land that's, you know, available in the half mile that and we look at sort of, that when the list gets expanded, we try and stay within the half mile.
I wonder if we still have the electronic maps we did originally with all the conservation land and stuff, because we did this thing
Are we going through the 1 mile radius right now? We're gonna go through that real quickly. And
That's what I was,
Okay.
I think it might not hurt to see if there's any on there that jump out that we want to get more information on.
If you'd like, I could
Yeah, if you
go
have-
through this and kind of.
You probably know the addresses,
Yes.
yeah. Go ahead.
12 Center Street is likely the church. Okay, that's the only thing I can think of there. That's probably the church, probably the Church Hill.
Yeah, so you might not know this, but the town owns the hill behind the church.
So this
Did
is
you know
the
that?
split.
I had heard that as a splitting hill.
Little Mountain Road we discussed. 178 College Highway, that's gonna be the cemetery.
Actually, Little Mountain Road is, that's actually a different parcel, but it might be adjoining,
Yeah, probably.
because the other one is the one the bottom.
I think the 78.7, I think that's conservation. I think the water might be the 6.5.
Okay.
That's just,
Hang on one
I think
second.
that would be worth, Mark, when you're pulling those, if you
Sure.
could look at any of those Little Mountain, 0 or just Little Mountain, just to see what they are, you know, and,
Just, it's 6.05, yeah, there's two of them together, right, this one is adjourning, the other is
okay, so it's just.
contiguous with the other one. It's the same
Okay.
water.
So 178 we know.
0 East Street, the 8, I would imagine that that's probably Conant Park and the library.
Oh, okay.
I suspect it is.
What address?
It says 0 East Street, but it's 8 acres, so I suspect that's probably Conant Park and the library. 82 Brickyard Road Extension, that's probably Hazel Young's conservation area. The High Street rear, I suspect that's probably going to be what abuts the town hall man, right?
What again?
The 10 acres, the High Street, and it says rear.
That's on High Street? Yeah.
It goes
That
right
land
up.
that was purchased,
It
yeah, if
goes
it's
right
10
up
acres,
High
that's
Street.
probably it, yep. That was purchased in order to build the public safety complex and to have a septic.
No, that's wrong, because it's 10, this says 10 acres, that was never 10 acres.
It was never 10
Yeah,
acres?
10 acres.
Well, let me check, it's map 23,
Yep.
Would that be where that old town?
It's on High Street.
was?
That's what I'm thinking. I think it's the water tower.
Yeah, it might, yeah, that might be it too.
And High Street rear, there's no number. That's strange.
So 2354.
Oh, right here it is, Town of Southampton, 10 acres. It's actually, seems like it's landlocked there.
Right, yeah, that's what it is. Is it close to that private drive that goes up the mountain a little bit?
The private drive's not on here.
What about Clark Street? It would be across Clark Street and up and west.
Mm-mm. It's strange, it's just this one plot of land, which is good to know about. There's no access though. I'll show you.
Sounds like a water tank.
This would be the private way they keep it,
I wonder if it was taken
because
by...
Second Street.
Could have been taken for
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know why, how we ended up with that.
Probably took it for taxes.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It's right here. So it's kind of landlocked. Here's High Street. Maybe somebody didn't pay taxes and we split off some of their property or something, or there was a, what, a health issue? Anyway, it probably should be kept on there, just because it's, I have a meeting at 6, I just want to let you know.
Yeah, no, that's, I have.
Um,
It was well.
Somehow I think it's considered.
Okay, well, I think at least maybe get more information on that one, on the High Street property, since we don't know
Sure,
everything on
yeah.
it. All right, so we'll star that High Street one as the first on this list to get more information on. All right, Riverdale Road, 11 acres.
I suspect, and this is just where Gun Road and Riverdale Road intersect,
19.
that would be right there, because I think there was an insect study, a mosquito study that I thought Charlie would know about that, but I will tell you this, because it's really gonna road, it's gonna be very, very
Yeah,
slick.
you gotta wear snorkels in the
Yeah.
springtime.
I always remember what you said too about Riverdale, Charlie, about flooding. Every single time they mention MVP, I think of that. So Riverdale is 11 acres and it's,
If it's a flood zone, or anything, I mean, I don't know if it's an official flood zone, but.
I don't see town of Southampton on here, that's weird.
Should we get more information on that one if we don't know where it is, I
Well,
suppose?
I think not necessarily for our purposes, but it would be good for, I think, the select board to know about town-owned property in terms of getting rid of it, frankly. But I don't know enough about it.
Okay, do we want to look into the Riverdale Road one?
Why don't I'll look into it. I mean, it doesn't seem
You don't want me
appropriate.
to look at that
I would
one?
like to, huh?
I mean,
I'm not
if
gonna
you
look
want
into
to
it.
pull the
Oh.
information on that one, I mean,
Yeah, if you're able to, that would be great. I don't know anything about it. I don't know where it is. It's not showing up here anywhere.
Start that
The
one.
acreage is 1106.
yeah, and then 52 to 62 College Highway.
That would be where the water tank is for the water department on Route
Yes.
10. And it abuts the conservation land on Glendale Road.
13 acres seems like a lot for just a water tank, is there?
It's a well field.
It's a well field, yeah.
It's a well field.
So it's the well field, okay,
Yeah,
so you can't
it's
do
not a
anything
water
there. Okay. 48 East Street,
I suspect that's the East Street side of Hazel Young's
Yeah.
conservation area.
okay. 68 Palmer
Where is
Road?
Hazel Young's conservation
The
area?
railroad.
Manhan.
Right at the railroad
Oh,
track.
yeah, okay.
That was just recently acquired, 68 Palmer Meadow Road, through the town just acquired that through, Ed, you would know that.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the bench
Yeah,
yesterday
Water
afternoon.
protection.
Is that the water?
Yes.
The benches are there?
That's
What's that?
Are the benches there on Palmer Meadow now?
The entrance to Hazel Young.
Oh, yeah, that's
There's
the
the
one on
bench.
East Street, yeah. 68 is the one that's the,
It has that sign there, right,
Yeah.
actually. Clark Street, 18 acres on Clark Street, no number. I'm not sure what Clark Street is.
yeah, Clark Street is where Marmon Keystone is.
Oh, that could be Conant Park.
Oh, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense, the ball field.
Okay.
I can't believe Riverdale Road's coming up again.
Uh,
Yeah, 20.
2 on Riverdale Road?
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Does that go with the zip to bar? Any chance?
Yeah, you know what? That's it.
That's not on Riverdale though, that's on College Highway, isn't it?
No, because Riverdale comes off the top of that hill.
Oh,
If you look at the barn to your
Right.
right, Riverdale's right there.
But, yeah, I thought that barn's private. And that land is too, because,
yeah, the
On
Barnes
the other side of the
Conservation.
street, yes.
The Barnes Conservation.
Yeah, the other side.
oh, the barn, yeah,
But
you're
on
right,
the other
yeah.
side, where the
Yeah.
golf, where the.
Where the canal is, that's the
Yeah.
canal. Yeah, you're right.
1935.
And that barn needs roof again.
Map 20.
Yeah, be careful what you say.
Map 19.
No ladder.
No more ladder trucks. You left by the comment and see if there's a problem you get run over. This thing had like.
To Riverdale, I mean, it's obviously the beginning close to College Highway, right?
Yes.
That barn,
But it says 20 acres.
It's the conservation land.
Yeah.
So is that on conservation?
Yeah, it's not just the barn, there's some property that goes with that barn.
Okay. But if it's in conservation, it's off the table, I would assume.
I'm just surprised I don't see it on the map here.
24 Glendale?
That's
That's the conservation.
Oh, so that's
area
all,
over there.
Yeah.
that one, okay. And then the last one is 74 Brickyard.
That is the other end of Hazel Young's
Okay.
conservation area.
So I've starred the ones to get more information on as 34 Pomeroy Meadow Road, Little Mountain Road, both of the parcels that are kind of one chunk, High Street rear, and Riverdale Road. The Riverdale Road without a number, the one that's 11.06 acres. Are there any others for now that we think we should hold deed information and more info on, in addition to looking at the report that was done 10 years ago prior to the next meeting? I know we're trying to wrap up here by 6, but just so we have something to review next time. Does
What's
that
the
make
deed
sense?
restriction of a Conant? Do you know?
Recreation and there's another term that's like recreation. I don't think it's open space.
We forewarned you because I did a lot of deed research on these properties. Go check and see what the deed restrictions actually say. Because we were told that there was deed restrictions for a park behind this building.
Yeah.
That never existed.
Yeah. No, I was just curious. I know there was a little bit of controversy when the library was built, that it, you know, that it fell under that category that you just mentioned, and some people felt it did and some people felt it didn't. It was kind of...
I remember just looking at this not too long ago, so I'll pull that deed.
Okay. That sounds good. Anything else on these properties for today? I think starting with the town-owned makes sense.
I will say Clark Street, I was tasked in the last committee to check into the Marmon Keystones, and they, as soon as I reached out to them about a couple months later, they actually sought a commercial real estate agency, and they were selling it for 1.7 million. About 3 or 4 days ago, I got an email saying that's now 1.1 million for 12 acres.
Wow.
Yeah, they're getting warmer.
Yeah.
Don't do the patient.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
They throw a building in with it.
No building with it,
This
no.
is the land.
No, just the land.
No, well, I do, but I suggested it. Sweeten the pot, throw the building in with it.
Right.
Which ones are on this list?
What's that?
High Street rear?
I was going to say,
Yeah. Should be able to-
Just
should be able to
these
drive
two
around
High
the
Street
middle.
rear.
And then Riverdale Road, okay.
Anything on subcommittee reports? I know we talked last time about, I don't think you guys, okay, sounds good.
Do you have a plan yet as far as Easthampton Media, or are you just kind of?
We talked to them, and just, nothing from, we talked to them prior to our last meeting. Just came up, they did offer to do some work with us. One of the folks in the media company had done similar type videos and some things that he could offer into it. And honestly, haven't pursued anything further since that point.
Anyone else have anything else not on the agenda you'd like to discuss? Okay. Next meeting 2 weeks from now, which will be the 18th of April, same time, same place.
Ed, when you stepped out of the room, Mark had asked about whether or not 1 mile out is too far. We should be looking closer to a 3/4 radius.
Yeah, that's something I actually noticed too with the list, especially the town-owned one is smaller, but the privately owned one, it gets to be like, you go up from a half mile, 1 page, up to a solid 3 pages. Is that something they could run 3/4 mile to see?
I'll have to go back and look. Actually, the first attempt that they did, that I had them do by actual map number rather than a radius, so they can figure out how to do the radius. That might come out to about 3/4 of a mile. I'll check.
Okay. Just so it's a lot, getting to the 1 mile private properties, gets to be a lot of properties. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at town-owned business, properties, but, the next best thing is a property that will be donated to the town, like the LaBrie property. And reviewing the minutes from 2018, it seemed like Eugene LaBrie was ready to donate that property. I was just wondering, are we sure that that's changed?
I can't speak.
Yeah, I know that the last time he was officially asked, officially meaning it was a select board request of him, the answer was no. And that was right after the vote for the zoning change up there. So that might have just been an initial sentiment because he was disappointed with the way the vote went. But, yeah, well,
When was that?
Ed, do you remember when that was? Because you're the one that actually reached out to him.
2020.
Yeah, it was, I think it was like February of 2020. Yeah, at
It
the
was just
special
before-
town
It
meeting.
was just before COVID and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
If the select board so asked me, I would reach out to Mr. LaBrie again.
Yeah.
But again, that's becoming under the select board's bailiwick of reaching out for property.
Yeah, I think we just go through the list and we whittle it down and we get the information on all the properties and then we meet together and decide who to send requests to.
Yeah.
But it would, I think that we'll do better if we, do it in writing. There was a lot of verbal communication last time and I think it made it confusing.
Yeah. I think there also might be something to be said after we talked about if we have a list of 5 private properties, sending those letters at the same time. I mean, that would be a select board decision, of course, but rather than anyone feeling like they were prioritized or non-prioritized or,
Yeah.
anyway, that's just a thought.
I know we did send a letter out to somebody last time that was disappointed that nobody got back to them. And that was not, I don't think it was a good corner. It was the land that was across from Fulmer. They wrote back and said, yes, they are interested in selling land. And I think that, we had our sites elsewhere. And so I just want to make sure that we don't do anything to erode public trust. Let's go through these lists. Let's disqualify places. Let's whittle it right down. And then decide as a group who to send letters out to. I also think at some point we have to talk about, getting money for the feasibility committee. And I mean, I still think, I know that this ARPA funds are not an unlimited pot, but that doesn't require going to town meeting, and I really feel like if it's an update to an existing one or relooking at possibilities, I'd really support something happening sooner rather than later.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I can add something to the agenda for next meeting for money to start discussing a feasibility study in addition to discussing the property information.
Wouldn't that be the next step after, we whittle the list down and then send out inquiries?
Yes.
Okay.
So the feasibility study would, after we sent our inquiries, they would then look at the feasibility for the lots that we.
Yeah, we would just write up what we were looking for them to do.
Okay.
They might look at, I'm not the chair.
Is there?
Sarah, Chiefy Ellingsworth has a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
And maybe this is more directed to you, maybe you might know a little bit more than I would, but, there's 2 entities now looking for land, right? The COA's looking for potential land as
Yeah.
well as the Public Safety Committee. Do you think at some, should we try to join forces or at least communicate with each other a little bit as committees to see where potentially you can make a complex versus 2 separate locations?
Have they fully formed? Where are they with their?
Yeah, I think it's on the agenda for the next week. I think there's a few people that have put their name in, right?
We received 1 more application, correct?
Okay, so that means that there's a total of 3 applications. So Janet Kane, COA Chair, myself, Ed, Joan Linehan are all on the committee, and then there's, I think, 4 or 5 other.
I think there's 4 or 5 others, I think. Yes, 5 open at large slots.
Okay, so you're actually on the committee then?
Yeah,
So you
and
can't vote.
and
Okay,
Ed
good.
too, so we can kind of share information, but I agree it's the right thing to do. I think that I went up and down all the businesses, or most of them in College Highway, giving out COVID test kits if they wanted them, and actually when I went up to somebody they said, oh, I saw the article in the paper. There might be a possibility to build it, you know, down on College, across from, next to Cullen Farms there, or next to Parkland O'Grady. So I think that people are, you know, people saw that and are now thinking about where it could actually go. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea to
It
provide.
was one of the reasons the query was asked for is 3 acres or larger rather than like between 3 and 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Isn't there something official from the presentation that was made for the housing committee by Cannon and was it back in November?
Yeah, so they did a
Are there
presentation.
minutes there,
You're
or?
talking
They-
affordable house.
They did a presentation, and actually there's a meeting at 6 o'clock, that CBC meeting that I have to go to, that actually is to buy, a request to buy the land up on College Highway. That's for sale. As
What is that?
as affordable property, the one that's almost across from the golf course. That's why they're meeting with CBC. But back to your question, there was a presentation that was done by Bob Cannon and maybe his brother and/or Todd Barron or something, saying that they were interested in building on the Labrie property a large number of houses and up to 10 affordable houses. So the housing committee was very excited about it, and then they said that it wasn't doable. Then they thought they'd be able to do something for senior housing, and then they said, they sent a letter to the housing authority saying neither of those options are doable.
Yeah. Okay.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe a question for you. Does the town have available the property maps digitally that we could get?
Yeah, that's a very good
They're on
question.
the line, and I can send those out as easily as I did the property list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could send those to me.
When I was in the
that'd be
Open Space
helpful.
Committee, we all purchased these, but they're already 2017, so I know there have been changes, so I just wanted to have a reference what we talked about.
No, that was
lands.
helpful.
Community map is good too.
Yeah, Unimapper.
That's
Um,
online.
Okay, I know Reenie's trying to get, I was supposed to be on that
It's
meeting.
on Zoom anyway.
Yeah.
I know in the senior center, one of the things I'd asked the council on aging director was just because the Gazette article said they had to have something built in 2 years, but she clarified and said it just needs to have a plan in 2 years. So if you're sitting on that committee, I don't think.
Yeah, and the difficulty was that the person that sat down with Red Parsons was one attorney who is no longer available. So Amanda Zadonis Kemp picked up the pieces and she was trying to interpret and said that it was one of the more challenging directives to interpret.
That sounds like it was.
So we're kind of clarified, what does it mean by final plan?
Yeah.
Does it mean, yeah.
Yeah, because that would make a big difference for them whether they were viable
Yeah.
to
Mm.
be with us. Because if
Yeah.
they had to have something built in 2 years, that would be.
The majority of that will was written in Greg. Yeah, really, yeah. It left a lot of open-ended questions.
Wow.
Sometimes that's not bad.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
Yeah, sometimes it isn't, that's
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
Right.
So,
Is there anything else?
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
All in favor of adjourning?
Right.
who seconded it?
Thanks, everyone.
Was it here?
All right, I'm gonna go home for this meeting, so I'm gonna go jump on Cindy home.
Oh, you're on that?
Cindy asked me to sit in for the planning board.
Oh, okay,
She's
great.
making for a few minutes.
I have to,
You do it from here?
where's your home?
Cold Spring Road, like right next to Cindy.
Yes, they are.
You want to drop me off at the intersection up there? Yeah, because my car's at Dan.
Tonight, you guys are meeting tonight?
I'm gonna jump on
What
my
time?
phone, 6 o'clock.
Town department wants to-
And right here again?
No, it's a Zoom meeting of
Parker in alphabetical
the
order.
Housing Authority and the Community Preservation Committee. They'd like to release funds from the Community Preservation Housing account.
I think I have the Zoom connection. It's hard to keep up with all these meetings.
I know it is. Actually, I'm gonna grab this and I'll bring it back tomorrow, okay?
We get stuff back about broken covers. We get things back about where we need GFIs that aren't there. You got it.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'll send you that picture, okay?
All right, sounds good, Reed.
Thank you.
What do I have to do?
See you later.
Just push that button again on the thing below the table. Should be right there.
That's a button. Oh, it's right here.
Usually you don't push the buttons. It's recorded.
It's got a counter going on, maybe I didn't do it right.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.